Hey guys, let's talk about movies. Now I know we used to talk about movies a lot more on this channel, and we still really love movies. The problem is when we talk about them, no one watches the videos. But today we wanted to try because we think that some of the recent stuff going on with superhero movies has some much broader implications for our culture. And also there's a personal side of this for me, and I'll confess to you guys, I'm way too into superhero movies and TV shows. Embarrassingly so. I've been there on opening day for almost every MCU film. For Batman. And then the Batman they made after that.
What are your superpowers again? I'm rich.
And then the new Batman.
Yeah. He's an orphan.
I'll probably be there for the next Batman. We have so many Batmen. This makes me feel old. But the point is that I love these movies, which is also why it feels weird to say this. I'm getting so sick of them. And I don't think I'm alone in that. Over the past couple of years, just as the media has been saturated with superhero films and TV, their popularity has just started to plummet. Now, between 2012 and 2021, Marvel had 10 films gross over $1 billion. But since 2021, they've had 0. And most recently, things have gotten worse for all superhero content creators. Black Adam, Ant-Man Quantumania, Shazam Fury of the Gods, and The Flash all massively underperformed, if not just outright bombed. This predictably prompted, conservatively speaking, 100,000 think pieces on superhero fatigue. And we've actually gotten a lot of feedback that occasionally on the channel, we talk about big social and cultural problems without giving any solutions, which is why today, I'm not just here to talk about what went wrong with superhero movies. I'm here to figure out how to fix it. And I think that the potential answer, ironically enough, lies in James Gunn's latest superhero tentpole, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which I actually think was pretty good, and it's streaming now. This video is not sponsored by the company that streams it, and I'm definitely not giving free advertising, especially as that company freezes out really talented writers and actors during an ongoing strike. But I will say it's a movie that you can watch on a streaming service owned by some monsters. Now, on face, this may seem like a stretch, but I think the film encapsulates a salient critique, not just of superhero films, but of the state of Hollywood today. All of this has to do with data. Yes, data.
It is a witticism, a gag, a bon mot.
I'm gonna try to explain in this video, did data kill superhero films? Now, before we explain the critique at the heart of Guardians, we gotta do a quick recap of the movie. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 opens with our heroes attacked by a gold-tanned goon who tries to kidnap Rocket Raccoon, mortally wounding him in the process. In order to save Rocket's life, the Guardians have to get past a kill switch that's embedded in him by OrgoCorp, the company that created him. Cue Rocket's tragic backstory, where we learn he was made by a man known as the High Evolutionary in a long line of genetic tampering to create a perfect species. Whenever powerful dudes try to tamper with genetics to create a perfect species, that always goes well. The Guardians travel to OrgoCorp's headquarters to override Rocket's kill switch, which, it turns out, is exactly what the High Evolutionary wants, because he needs Rocket to finish his new utopia. Now, this all leads, of course, in the third act, to a big showdown with battles and explosions, way too much CGI, and a killer soundtrack, which is pretty standard superhero fare. Things get a little more complicated when you look at the film's antagonist, the High Evolutionary. The first image we see of him is his hand reaching out to touch a young Rocket, which probably looks familiar if you've seen art before. Now, indeed, throughout the film, the High Evolutionary repeatedly compares himself to God. When confronting Adam Warlock and the High Priestess, he tells them,
"Find 89P13 and return it to me, or I will destroy your entire civilization, as is my right as your maker."
And during the film's climax, one of his underlings pegs him.
"Sire, you have an irrational obsession with this animal. You must stop, for God's sake!"
To which he responds,
There is no God! That's why I stepped in!
Now, having a god complex is pretty textbook superhero villain stuff. But what separates the High Evolutionary from his baddie brethren is that he, unlike the others, is presented as the head of a business. Yeah, the super evil bad person is a dude that owns a tech company that wants to make the world better. Who could imagine such a thing? Now, this god runs a corporation, OrgoCorp, pretty much your run-of-the-mill business conglomerate with lofty goals and bullshit inspirational content.
All of our research supports the High Evolutionary's altruistic objective
of creating a utopian society.
By correlating its villain with a god complex to big corporations, the movie's not so subtly critiquing big tech CEOs' ascent to nearly god-like status. Take it from professor and author Yuval Noah Harari, who theorizes that as civilization progresses, new religions will come not from kooky cultists, but from Silicon Valley. According to Harari, today religion isn't made in heaven, it's made on earth. In the Middle Ages, the idea was that God knows us best of all, and that we should follow his commands and his representatives. In the modern age, we are told, no one understands you better than you know yourself. And because of that, you shouldn't listen to any external authority. Authority is shifting to algorithms and external data processing systems that are supposed to know us better than we know ourselves. Now, in other words, we quit looking for answers at church and seek them out in our perfectly customized digital experiences. And with the rise of streaming services, Silicon Valley's data-worshipping mindset has permeated Hollywood. According to Nick Nelson, former head of product creative at Netflix, one of the biggest things Netflix does so effectively is to collect data on a level that I've just never seen any company do. They use this data, predictably, to improve content performance and allegedly to improve the user experience. Thanks. But even on the big screen, data is increasingly reshaping how movies are made. And more studios are turning to AI via data collecting companies like Synalytic. This technology supposedly can not only predict the optimal release date for a film, but can project how everything from casting to a film's central themes affect their overall box office potential. Be clear, guys, they're using data to say what themes work for a movie. Who should we put in it? Let's just make it data for let's have a data movie. It's like every movie that Netflix tends to make seems like it's a weird data collage. As reporter James Vincent writes for The Verge, Synalytic licenses historical data about movie performances over the years, then cross-references it with information about films' themes and key talent using machine learning to tease out hidden patterns in the data. Its software lets customers play fantasy football with their movie, inputting a cast, then swapping one actor for another to see how this affects a film's projected box office. And honestly, we think it's only fair to assume that this trend is just going to keep accelerating, and that our cinematic programming will be driven less by artistic inspiration and innovation and more by the kind of number crunching that would make a classic TI-86 calculator drool with envy. And the High Evolutionary fits this data-driven mindset to a T. He controls millions of genetic codes that he's constantly tinkering with in hopes of creating the perfect species.
What is all this? Species patented over the years using OrgoCorp tech. Every species OrgoCorp has created has its own individual file.
When the High Evolutionary talks about his creations, he refers to them in the same way a big tech company would, as data. They're not even named, they're coded with numbers.
Back in the cage, P13.
I mean, imagine that, right? A tech person that wanted to use data and technology to change people, maybe to put stuff in their brains. Maybe you call the company Neuralink. Throughout the film, Rocket and the other genetic creations are referred to as tech, belonging to the company.
Apparently someone considers some proprietary technology and sent that golden lunatic to get him.
And later in the film, our buddy Sly says,
OrgoCorp is in possession of some of the most advanced cybergenetic IP in the galaxy.
What's more, he views them as programmable technology. When they turn violent, he laments,
They're programmed to be peaceful, like you. But for some reason, it's not catching.
So what is the end result of his data-driven mindset? Well, pretty underwhelming. When the Guardians travel to the High Evolutionary's supposed utopia, it's pretty much just Earth with animal people. And everything is derivative, right down to a Statue of Liberty knockoff. Now, with all that data, the best that the High Evolutionary could come up with was just a copy. And even this copy fails. The High Evolutionary's counter-Earth has all the same issues that regular Earth has, like drugs and violence.
This is the perfect society?
Actually, I don't see any alt-right podcast host there, so I guess maybe that's a thing that they don't have. Now, it's hard not to see this as James Gunn's critique of the current Hollywood landscape, one where data increasingly drives what's made and marketed, creating a result that always seems to feel less than, like a copy of a copy. And that's how I felt in some of the recent superhero movies. I'm sitting there and I just don't feel anything. Everything looks like poorly made CGI. And to be clear, it's poorly made because they're rushing the designers and not paying them enough to do it, so it's not their fault. Now, this reminds us of Baudrillard, whose famous critiques of modern life charged that we increasingly live in a simulation, where signs and symbols have replaced reality. As we've talked about before, his work was really inspirational for the Wachowskis when they were coming up with The Matrix. Famously, he uses Disneyland as the prime example of a place where all meaning is based in symbols. We think this can be seen in the superhero genre, where new releases still have all the trappings of classic superhero films, big budgets, exciting IP, blood pressure raising action sequences, but the results increasingly feel like the Splenda to Iron Man sugar. It's that feeling of seeing something and feeling like this looks like how a superhero movie is supposed to look. It sounds like how it's supposed to sound, yet it just feels kind of empty. Now, the empty spectacle reminds us of Baudrillard's distinction between a person who has the flu and a person who merely has all the symptoms of the flu. Though the two people may present identically, they're not the same. One person has the reality of the illness, the other has a mere simulation or experience of it. In this metaphor, this might sound weird, having the flu would be the good movie, not actually having the flu would be the bad one. Many of these movies have all the symptoms of a superhero film. The hero, the villain, the enchanted special object we have to travel across the galaxy to find. They present as superhero films, but are missing some essential quality, some magical, fun pizzazz. And this lack renders them mere simulations of the real thing. Recently, I've been drinking non-alcoholic beer because, I'm sleeping less. I got this kid at home and I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night and feel a little hungover or whatever, but I want the ritual. But then it's just what am I doing? I'm paying $12.99 for 6 cans of a thing that tastes like the real thing, but isn't the real thing. Maybe I should start getting drunk again. The sum of their parts simply doesn't coalesce into an authentic story or cinematic experience. Just take it from James Gunn. When asked about what's gone wrong with the superhero genre, he said,
I think that what's happened is people have gotten really lazy with their superhero stories. And they have gotten to the place where, it's a superhero, let's make a movie about it. You know? And they let's make a sequel because the first one did pretty well. And they aren't thinking about, why is this story special?
The obsession with data in Hollywood feels at least partly to blame. Isolating the various parts of the film from theme to actor risks leaving us with a cinematic mishmash of parts that lack artistic cohesion. Still, the economics of most superhero films continue to basically make sense, especially given their international appeal. That's thanks in large part to their focus on action sequences over, say, a culturally specific dialogue or humor. As such, even so-called bombs are profitable enough to justify their own existence, at least on a balance sheet. Now, this cynical assembly line logic has always dominated Hollywood, where the classic studio system would recycle similar plot lines, often with the same cast. But with the increasingly shrinking pool of movies and the comatose state of the indie film world, it's starting to feel like the only thing we're left with is big budget repetition. And with AI growing ever more powerful, feels like more of the same Frankenstein films are what we have to look forward to. Yay. Shout out a film that you're actually looking forward to in the comments. I'll say one. I'm really excited about Killers of the Flower Moon. Scorsese. I mean, come on. What more do you need than that guy? Indeed, Mattel's announcement of 13 new films with 45 more in development based on their massive IP suggests that even if Marvel, however improbably, goes extinct, will be greeted with a new cinematic universe based on a similar logic. The logic being, make movies about toys so that people buy toys, so we make money about the toy movies, and but we also make money selling the toys. Guys, there's people who look at this system and they're just like, capitalism is so good. Me and my Ayn Rand tattoo are going all the way to the bank with this logic, baby. And it's like, what's your soul like if that's what you think? What is the state of your soul? Let me know in the comments. So what's the solution to our current cinematic dystopia? Well, it actually goes back to the High Evolutionary. According to the Purple Baddie, the reason his utopias continue to fail is because they're missing one essential ingredient: creativity. I mean, if you didn't think Gunn was being real with it now you know. The movie is criticizing a bad guy that owns a company that just wants all the IP and doesn't value creativity. It's like, I can almost see some of the buildings in Hollywood from right here, and it's like he's talking about those guys. Of all the High Evolutionary's creations, only Rocket was able to think of something new. When the High Evolutionary is stuck on how to make his newest creatures docile, it's Rocket who figures out the solution.
And then they make, what do you say?
Low-beta microsemina proteins.
Yeah, thems. And then angry turtles.
This is why the High Evolutionary is so intent on capturing him, because he needs that creative spark.
In hundreds of years of our creations, only one
Has known true invention. One. Putrid in every other way, but 89P13 had that.
Yes, sir.
A populace unable to think. What hasn't yet been thought will die on the vine.
So again, it's like the business people want to capture the creative people to just milk them for that which they cannot produce themselves. Interesting. Rocket here becomes a stand-in for James Gunn, an actual artist in a Hollywood increasingly run by cold, hard numbers and data. Just as Rocket's able to solve the High Evolutionary's violent creature problem, Gunn revitalized the superhero genre with the first Guardians of the Galaxy film, which took a bunch of obscure characters and made them household names. Seriously, like go up to your grandma and say, Gamora. She'll know what you're talking about, you know? Be like, hey, grandma. Drax. She'll know what you're talking about. I'm just kidding. She probably won't, because a high percentage of older people have dementia. And much as the High Evolutionary has sought to replicate Rocket's success, Marvel has repeatedly tried to recreate the Guardians' magic with other cosmic set stories tinged with an irreverent style of humor. And the results, well, they've been a little bit mixed. These films, no matter how hard they try, just aren't quite the same.
What's this even made of? Vibranium?
Fall collection. IKEA. Ass.
You know, it's like the symptoms without the flu, the whole thing we talked about. We're an epidemiology channel now. You can feel the hand of an executive thinking, well, hey, this worked before, so let's do it again, just with a different set of characters. Mix it, repeat it, just copy it, make some money, much as the High Evolutionary does. And hey, if any executives or CEOs are watching this, don't worry, we're not talking about you. You're one of the good ones. We're talking about the others also. Email me so you can give us money to sell our souls to create data for you. But in the end, all this tinkering and obsessing just creates inauthentic bullshit that no one actually wants anyways. These copies are missing the singular voice behind a movie like Guardians. They're missing James Gunn's unique vision.
We need 89P13's brain so we can transfer that trait
into these creatures before we go to the new colony. Nothing else matters.
Even here, the High Evolutionary doesn't value Rocket as an actual living being. He only cares about his use value, which can then be mined for data and replicated, the living being discarded. According to Harari, this is the bleak future that tech and data-driven companies seek, one where power will be concentrated in the hands of a tiny elite, and most jobs will become automated, leaving millions of people unemployed. As Harari writes, in the 21st century, we might witness the creation of a massive new unworking class, people devoid of any economic, political, or even artistic value, who contribute nothing to the prosperity, power, and glory of society. This useless class will not merely be unemployed, it will be unemployable. Whew. Oh boy, let me know in the comments if that one just punched you in the The High Evolutionary treats his creations in much the same way, deeming those that don't serve a purpose useless and then just discarding them, as he eventually does with Counter-Earth.
Which is why, as I've done many times before, I'm going to have to raise it all and start again.
But Guardians of the Galaxy 3 refutes this notion, saying that everyone has worth and purpose.
A purpose for what? They made us for nothing. This stupid experiments to be thrown away.
There are the hands that made us, and then there are the hands that guide the hands. My beloved raccoon. This story has been yours all along. You just didn't know it.
In this moment, Gunn stands up for the individuals, the artists who guide their own hands and tell their own story. In a recent interview, he reiterated the importance of artistic and creative freedom, saying execs need to put stories back in the hands of individual artists. As Gunn says, we want to really elevate writers again, make writers as important as they are, and become architects of the story. And we can see a lot of Gunn's sentiment echoed in the ongoing writer's strike. Hollywood scribes are agitating against practices that diminish the value of creativity, like having AI write original shitty scripts that writers then get to edit for half the price. It's not good. Full solidarity with the WGA. We love you guys and we hope you win. But it's worth asking, is Gunn practicing what he preaches? Well, last year, the filmmaker was brought on as the new head of DC Films to help the flailing division. And since then, he's repeatedly stated that he intends to refocus on creativity and ensure each superhero film in the DC filmverse feels distinct, putting artists and craftsmen first, which is a a good thing, right? Well, we're hoping so. But the first thing that Gunn did after being instated as the head of DC is just destroying the current DCEU in an effort to start anew and make a better, maybe more perfect superhero verse. Batman and Superman recast yet again, just like the High Evolutionary did to the misbegotten creatures he deemed useless. So has Gunn, the wily creative who bucked against the system, become the very thing he's been railing against? Well, only time can tell. But I can't help but think of a line from one of the gold standards of superhero films.
You're either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
But what do you all think? Is data just going to destroy creativity and culture as we know it? Are we reading too much into the importance of superhero films? Is James Gunn becoming that which he's always hated? Let us know in the comments. Would love to hear what you guys think. Also, would really love to hear if you're interested in more videos like this where we use some contemporary films to talk about bigger issues going on in society. I know we used to do it a lot more. We kind of moved away from it, but we'd like to do it again, but only if you want it. And we can't afford the data company that tells us what you think. So I just have to ask you. Another thing I'll ask you is to consider joining our Patreon. Huge thanks, of course, to our current patrons who get videos early with no ads, extra audio and video content, access to our Discord server, and also access to my birth certificate at the $28,000 level. But there's a link in the description. Check it out. It's a really big help to us if you can swing it. But if not, thank you so much just for being here, for watching the videos, for liking, subscribing. So thanks again. And in the meantime, I don't know, find an artist, you know, that's out of work and buy them a bowl of ramen, look them in the eyes and say, you're good enough. In the meantime, we'll see you later.